in the ground and it start growing up. One seed. And that seed, without nothing around, starts to multiply. Think about that. Just one seed, put it in the ground, put a little water on it, let the sun raise it, and next thing you know, over time, that seed starts to multiply. How is that possible? And then, when that female seed finally find the male seed, that's when you start seeing beautiful flowers come from it. Think about that one. Okay. As well as when you think about every species that does the exact same thing that you, ask yourself this. If they think like me, they do the exact same thing that I do, well, who is God to them? Who do they think that God is in? With the birds, who is teaching every bird in the sky to fly in the same manner? You see birds, they shoo, 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 all of them. Who was the leader of that? That ant. Who told that ant where the food was? Over there under my patio. And now we got a whole trail of ants. Who led the pack? The herd. Who told that herd in which way to travel? You ever notice how you could barely find one bird flying without a couple more birds? It was that bird or that ant that started walking alone that discovered something and came back. See, when you walk alone, you can discover something. When you leave the pack, it's crazy, ain't it? When you walk alone, you can discover something and bring it back to the pack. But long as you within that pack, you will never discover it. You will never discover it. And long as you keep staying into the circle of everybody else, you will never discover you. This life is a generation of curse. You were taught to live in the fear of your ancestors. Your religion is based off of the religion of your ancestors. So you keep living within the past, within the past, within the past. Fears. If you notice one thing about your life, DNA can't change, right? You look like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody. You look like your granddaddy that looked like his granddaddy. What, 100 years ago? And since DNA don't change, you look like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody. And it's going to keep going back in that same order. Keep going back. So if you're going to keep looking like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody who looked like somebody, how could it start? How could the world just start with two people? See, you were told so many things. Because if I tell you what it is, you would never find it for yourself. So if you look like somebody who looked like somebody, and you take it all the way back a million years ago, you have to ask yourself, if the world started with two people, who was the first two plants? Who was the first two fish? You think that as a man we could create fish that's underwater? Seeds, we can create a whole tradition. We can create the species that's almost bigger than species. The underground water kingdom is bigger than the human race, period. It is. You think that we as people could create that? Who was the first two chickens, ants, birds, gorillas, elephant? Oh, dinosaurs. Oh, let's keep going. Who were the first two of anything? But the world started with two people. See, let me tell you something. When they explain to you, you have to look at life in the form of a tree. The tree of life. Why? Because that's exactly what happened. Look at the sun. Look at all the elements. Look at the planets around. You think those planets scattered out for millions of years exist for nothing? Man, do the research real fast. All you have to do is look at the sun, look at the elements on Earth. Look at the elements that make up the Earth. Look at the elements that make up Jupiter. Look how close Mercury is. Look at the elements that make up Venus. Look at the elements that make up Uranus, Pluto, Mars. Look at those elements. I have the chart. I've seen them. Look at those elements, and look at they're made up of those planets are made up of mostly a certain element, and they're stretched out for millions of miles because of a reason. Think about it. And the truth is, when you look at it like this, and you think about it, and you look at Earth, and how Earth was formed, you have to think about the sun. Because everything surrounds the sun. And as people, we say that in space, right? In space, it is dark in space, right? It's cold in space, right? Now, without that sun, if you remove the sun from our existence, everything dies. That's the truth. Take away the sun, everything freezes over, everything is dark. Everything is dark, completely dark. Nothing exists. Why? Because there is no light. No light. So they say, they get out there, they say, oh, in space, there's no oxygen. Who told you that? The sun is extremely hot. That is fire all day. Look at the triad of fire. The triad is like a triangle. Fire can't run without oxygen. So yes, it is oxygen in space. It's just with the sun. Look at fire. Look at how fire is fire. Think about it. Heat rises. Cool. And if you look at a fire, oxygen. Everything keeps circling. You start a fire. Go start you a fire outside. You won't get that fire to light if it ain't no wind blowing. You know, you put a fire in a bowl of those little cheap George Foreman grills, you'll never get that thing to light unless you lift it up a little bit and let that go under it. That oxygen. So in space, yes, it is oxygen. It's just with the sun. That's something you will never be able to reach. You can't even look at the sun. Better think about that one. Think about that one. You can't even look at the sun. But that's how the world is going. It's circling the sun. Think about that. It's circling the sun. And those elements around it, those planets, make up the earth. So, like it says, out of darkness comes what? Light. What is the brightest light? The sun. Now, see, the earth was quiet, dark, nothing. And see, the Bible even tells you in this literature, and in probably in other scriptures, it tells you out of darkness came light. What is light? Heat. So when it's cold, when it's dark, with no heat, it's cold. It's cold, very cold. It's the temperature in space is like negative 400 degrees. Look at every element and how cold it get. Oxygen. I deliver oxygen and nitrogen. And you are made up of 70-some% oxygen, 20-some% nitrogen. No, 70-some% nitrogen, 20-some% oxygen. And the rest of the other elements that's on the periodic table, that's what you're made of. So when you think about how you are made of that, and the earth is made of that, and what the sun is. So if the sun is out there and it's dark, and all of a sudden, light come into form. That dark, and out of darkness came light, and then that light in a dark space out there in the galaxy, out there in the universe. What happens when that light finally became heat was formed out there in darkness? Now ask yourself this. Since heat was formed out there in darkness, what happened? When you place light in the dark, now you got heat. Because light is heat. We can see that from the sun. If you take cold and you take hot, what does it create? Like moisture. You can take a regular window that's cold, take a little bit of heat that's hot, and what? Create water almost from the moisture. It steams up, and then you see the little water come down. So that means out of nothing but cold and hot form water. What is water? H2O, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen. So while that's forming, that light is getting brighter, brighter, brighter. All of a sudden, that bright light, in order to survive out there into this dark place, it has to take form. It has to take form. So now that it's taking form, it's getting hot. It's boiling. It's boiling. It's extremely hot. It gets hot. The water form around it. It form a crust. Still got to shine through that crust. Get hotter. Get hotter. Because in order to run this universe, you have to be one of the strongest energies, period. Now that the sun is formed, it's forming, it's study forming, boiling. What is light? Well, we know one thing. If you shine light, everything has a ray. A light, what is a ray? A ray is a path in which light travels. And we know you can have a light like a circle, but that light could shine only so far. It can't cover everything no matter what. So it shines. And within that path, So my head, let's say my head is the light. So within that path, you see in the way in which I shine. And everything that is not within that path is what? Out of my ray. You know what I'm saying? So everything that's around, that's not in that path is still what? Cold. So I can only heat up the things that are in my path. So I have to keep it calming. I'm the sun. I have to bring everything to me. And the things that was created, water around the sun that came to start forming droplets. Water is constantly, so water is forming out there, and what's happening? That it's like that it's inside. That water is dropping, and then every time it fall out of that ray, what it does, it freezes up. It freezes up, and it fall into an endless space because what? It's in space. And it moves. So when you looking out there at the stars, it's just like what? The sun. But it has moved out of that ray because it fell from the sun. It fell. And some of those droplets that form kept on doing the same thing. So if you notice how strong the sun is, and you notice how hot the sun is, think about how the sun is shaped like a circle. And they say the circle of life. Think about the circle. Why? Because you take a complete circle and bring it back around. And it's endless. It's endless. Look at every shape of if you look out there at every shape, every planet, it has the same structure of a complete circle. A complete circle. And in every planet, there's a what? Volcano. Why? Why? Because that is the core principle of the sun, is the heat. Even the core of this world has what? That structural sun inside of it. That's why it's lava, baby. It has the lava. That structure, it has the sun in it. Even this earth has the sun in it. When you look out there at Jupiter, it got volcanoes and it has lava and it got what? The sun in it. But they have to dig deeper inside of the core principles to find what? The sun in it. You ever ask yourself, why when the earth bleed with the volcanoes, it shoot up, and all of a sudden the lava was red, and it runs, it bleeds. Then when it dries up, it stops bleeding, it forms a scalp. Yet then you have to ask yourself, who are you? See, from dust you come from dust you shall return. You come from the ground. When God created this world, from how the sun was formed and those planets were formed, it formed the earth. And the core principle of the earth is that piece of the sun that fell out of the ray, formed a scalp, and allowed the other planets that were still forming to create gases to form the earth. Look at the earth in its elements. It's made up of every planet and their elements. But they're so far because you can't place a certain amount of element in a it's only going to be allowed to have a certain amount of elements to create creation. And when the earth was formed, God what? Seeded the world. He seeded the world. He seeded the world. Some of those seeds hit the ground, form a trees, form life, grass. And guess what? Some of those seeds hit the water, created tadpoles, and tadpoles came from what? Fish. All different type of species. And when the seeds, he seeded the world and it hit the ground, what sprouted up?